All right, well, welcome everyone to episode one of the Beer and Skittles Depths of Pop Culture podcast. I'm David.
I am also David. In this podcast, we'll be getting into all different types of pop culture and everything behind the scenes of it, from music, movies, television, etc. In this episode, we are going to be discussing one of the biggest movies to drop in the past couple of years, The Batman.
It is definitely one of the biggest superhero movies to drop in the last couple of years, and arguably one of the best movies I've seen in the last few years.
Well, yeah, for sure. I think this movie is definitely going to be revolutionary for the superhero genre. I mean, we've had movies like it come out. I know we've compared it to Logan, The Joker, movies and such where they feel very cinematic and they have heavy cues when it comes to lighting design, sound, soundtrack, everything that goes into it that you don't always get from these huge MCU blockbusters, which gives a great feel that we haven't been used to for the past couple years.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I feel like it takes everything that the Dark Knight did, um, just a step further. Um, to give a kind of non-spoiler review for everybody listening that hasn't seen the movie yet. Um, this is year two of Batman. Um, this is just the beginning where you're skipping the origin story here. If you don't know what happened to Thomas and Martha Wayne at this point, maybe you shouldn't be watching the movie. Um, but jumping right into it, this is Gotham City at its worst. Um, Crime is at an all-time high. Police force is corrupt, and we get a rookie Batman that feels so grounded and real. Um, and so do the villains, even uh, your mafia bosses, Penguin and Carmine Falcone, who feel real and terrifying. Um, and then you get the Riddler, who's the main villain of this movie, um, who was inspired by the Zodiac killer, which is, another real life person that just helped ground this movie um, in a way that I don't think any other superhero movie really has done um, in the past. Like you said, the cinematography is fantastic. Even if you think there are better superhero movies, this is arguably the best looking movie I've seen in a long time. The soundtrack is also fantastic. The lighting, just everything that went into this movie, the team put together such a masterpiece.
Yeah, I think definitely a lot of those heavy inspirations from movies that weren't superhero movies were very present there. Um, when you bring up the Zodiac, which is a fan favorite of mine. If anybody watching hasn't seen it, I recommend you see it immediately. There is all-star performances all across the board in that movie. But you really do feel that way when you watch this movie, that you're getting that Zodiac vibe from it. I mean, I'm watching this movie. I'm a huge Batman fan. I've watched all of the shows, movies, read the comics since I was a little kid, and I know who the Riddler is. I know his persona. I know everything about him. But yet in my head, I'm like, who is this guy? Because they present him as a serial killer that cannot be catched. And it's just, it brings a weird mystery element, even though you know who it is,
Yep.
which is very hard to do. But they pulled it off beautifully.
I think the way I kept viewing his character, it's very much Zodiac in the way that he leaves these riddles and these ciphers, which is on point, and that's the character. Um, but he also had these elements of like Jigsaw, um, in the way that he went about staging them and killing these people. Um, and also it felt modern in the sense of just the internet presence he had and the way he was able to go about it. It was almost like a Team Anonymous type of thing. He's masked and he's revealing this corruption and these secrets that has, um, you know, almost similar to like what you would see in Mr. Robot, um, with F Society and everything. He's got these followers, and this is you know exposing the truth.
Yeah, it's definitely great how they execute it. I like to focus a lot on the aspect of the cinematography and how this film was shot before we get into too many details about the movie. Like we said, this is going to be our non-spoiler review. Later on, we're going to get into more of the gritty details for everybody that has seen the movie, so you can hear our real life thoughts on it. Um, but definitely within the cinematography, this is a beautifully shot movie, not just for a superhero movie, but a beautifully shot movie in general. There are so many times in the theater where I am watching and my jaw wants to drop because it just has a beautiful shot list throughout. The lighting was perfect, the set design amazing. I mean, all across the board, everybody behind the scenes did probably such an amazing job on that because everything about it felt real. Everything seemed so dark and gritty like Gotham feels, but also romanticized in a way with all of how the lighting is and how everything was presented. It just felt surreal.
Yeah, I big shout out to Greg Fraser, who was the cinematographer on this movie. He was the cinematographer on Rogue One, which is one of the best looking Star Wars movies.
The best in my opinion, but yeah.
Yep. And he just recently did Dune as well, which is one of the best looking movies that came out last year. I absolutely love Dune. Um, so, I mean, he's a fantastic cinematographer. Um, and I agree. I mean, just everything about it, that movie, even the look of the city, like it was almost like a blend between what Tim Burton did with Batman, and Christopher Nolan. I mean, it felt you had a lot of that gothic architecture, and Gotham felt like an old city that has been around for a long time, but it's also modernized with like the downtown where you see all the neon and all the signs. It felt like you were like in Times Square, but like in this gothic city. And all it did was illuminate how dirty the city was. It didn't really show it. It wasn't pretty looking, but you still got all these sky rises and these, um, all of these modern day, glass skyscrapers that are all over the place, and then you see inside the manor and it looks like it was ripped out of a Tim Burton nightmare.
Yeah, and I mean, no discredit to Tim Burton. I mean, what he did in the old Batman movies
Yeah.
was amazing. However, back then you didn't have the budget or the ability to pull off what they're doing now, but he had the right idea when it came to Gotham, which was try to pull it straight out of the comics. Obviously, it ended up being a little tackier now that you look back on it, because
Yeah.
again, you can't make everything look so real back then. And then you fast forward to like Bale and Nolan, and their push to Batman, and it felt like New York. I mean, plain and simple. That was
Yeah.
just New York City right there. Which nothing wrong with. I know their vision was to make things seem as real as possible, so they wanted to make it feel as if it was relatable to what we feel in the modern day. But this is, like you said, the perfect combo. It felt like it was pulled straight from the comic book, which was my favorite thing from this movie because there's so many times I am looking back and I am like, this is straight from a comic book, which
Yeah.
is not always something you see nowadays because everybody loves to adapt stories and everybody likes to change things. And yes, this isn't a perfect adaptation of anything Batman, but it gets really close and it brings you those moments that as a fan you are happy to see, which is more than enough for me to know that they're staying true to the material.
Yeah, I think it was a great blend of taking the comic book and the source material and still making it feel real. And, Matt Reeves has talked about a lot of grounding everything. And I think everybody took that as, oh, grounding it, it's going to be real. It's just going to be super realistic like The Dark Knight was. But I think what he really meant was grounding it in a way that it is relatable and it seems real and it's not too far fetched, but there's still these fantastic elements that exist within this world and within this movie. Um, You don't walk into a club nowadays and it's a mob club and there's a bunch of, people getting high and everything. Like it's not that setting anymore, but this is still modern day for the movie. So it feels real, but there's still these elements that, like, okay, this isn't 100% real life. This is borrowing from the comic and it works.
Well, yeah, it did a great mix because if you think about it, the clubs that are used, I'm not going to name drop. However, if you look at them, how they're depicted in the comics, compared to how they're depicted in the movie, it's not 100 shot for shot. But it does do a great mix of the elements because, you go into the club and there's this music bumping with the lights flashing, people dancing. But again, you have the same elements that you got from the comic books, that this is Gotham, this is crime bosses, this is etc. So it did a great job of fusing the two. And again, so some of those scenes just made me almost utterly speechless. um, Getting away from all of that, the acting, the leads of this, Robert Pattinson, I did a amazing job. Zoe Kravitz, I think, might have even done an even better job than he did. Not to take anything away from him, like I said, he did amazing. But her performance was real, and I really hope that I see so much more of her throughout whatever universe they create from this.
I think Zoe Kravitz does a really good job of playing up what I love about Catwoman is that she's not 100% bad. Yeah, she's a bad guy. She does, she breaks the law, but that doesn't make her a bad person. She's doing it to survive. She's doing what she needs to in order to survive and what's right for her. Um,
Yeah, she's not bad. She's just selfish.
yeah, a little.
That's really all. That's all it comes down to. I'm not bad. I just like my things. I'm just a little selfish.
I will say too, Colin Farrell was completely unrecognizable as the Penguin, and he did a fantastic job. Can't wait to see more of him. John Turturro, who played Carmine Falcone, was fantastic. Super serious role and like super unsettling. Um, every scene he had, I was like creeped out and was like, I don't want to be here.
Yeah, no, there's one scene especially in particular I'll get into later, once we get out of the spoiler-free review. And I'm sure just from the thought you could probably think of what scene I'm talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah, no, great performances all around. There wasn't one person that I felt carried this movie in any way, and there wasn't one person that I thought brought this movie down. I
Yep.
think it was great performances across the board. Um, Literally from Alfred to the villains to Batman to Gordon to Catwoman, everybody. I felt like there was great performances across the board.
I agree. And I do want to get more into it because I especially want to talk about the performance from the Riddler. There's one scene in particular that I thought he just like knocked it out of the park. Um,
Yeah,
so for anybody who at this point hasn't seen the movie and doesn't want spoilers, um, or if you just want to hear all about it before you see it for some reason, um, this is the time.
yeah. Um, so now you left off on Riddler, and I would love to get into Riddler. I
Yeah,
know when I first saw the pictures for Riddler, and I was seeing him, I was very skeptical. As I think most people were, because you're like, that is not the Riddler, because he's never been depicted in the way that you see now. However, once you get into this movie and you're watching it, it fits so well. I would hope to see that in the future they might bring him a little bit more to the comic accuracy, because my hopes for this entire universe is character development. This movie was great, and I think with character development, it can be astronomically even better as time goes on, as they keep making more movies. Um, but no, if anybody was doubting this Riddler, I'm very sorry, because I did too, and I really shouldn't have.
I think at the start of it too, he's a very different. Um, it's a very different portrayal than we've had. I mean, you look at the last time we saw the Riddler on the big screen, Jim Carrey played this character. Um, and he played it in a very Jim Carrey fashion, which there's nothing wrong with. That is, kind of who the Riddler was at the time, even in the cartoons and everything. He was this, kind of over the top, almost funny. But there were moments that, Paul Dano had that uh, kind of over the top. I saw it more the scene in which the DA has the bomb strapped to his neck and he has the phone in his hand and
Yeah, when he's telling those
he's
riddles, yeah, and he's
giving
giddy about it, like he's like laughing, like this is the
yeah,
best part of his day,
he's
right
playing
there.
a game show host.
Yeah,
He's like trying to be Alex Trebek. I had just read that he wanted to do 200 takes of that scene.
I know. I
um
I read that he did. I heard that it
yeah,
took a long time to do that scene, and honestly, it paid off. I feel like a lot of times in those cases, actors know what they're doing, and when they feel their performance isn't right, you should take their word for it, because they're the ones playing the character, and they usually know what's going to look great on that screen.
yeah, I think the other Matt Reeves has said that like it was his dedication to it that he knew he was going to do an amazing job and that he absolutely loved this character and understood it. um, and he could see how just excited he was, like, taking on this persona and playing this game with the district attorney. And he kind of was like directing himself, similar to how Heath Ledger had directed himself in those tapes where he played the Joker in The Dark Knight, that got sent into the news station. Um, kind of the villain taking over and like fully embracing the character.
Yeah, I mean, in those moments, um, he was comically terrifying.
Yeah,
Um, and I definitely think, as we get to those later scenes with him, is where, because at first you don't hear from him, you don't really hear him talk. You get the letters and everything, uh, but you don't really. But the end of the movie is you're getting a lot of screen time with him. You're getting a very good amount of screen time with him, when he's finally unmasked, and just from the first scene he takes that mask off, when he's sitting in the diner
yeah.
and they bust in and he just has that smug look on his face, like, wow, what did I do?
He even
Like,
he even says, "I just ordered a piece of pumpkin pie," like
yeah,
just like it's nothing.
yeah,
Um, and I loved that following scene where Batman is then interrogating him. He's talking to him in Arkham, and it's such a great scene that's super terrifying for Batman because he just starts Bruce Wayne, and all of a sudden you can see the look on Batman's face that shit, he knows. How does he know? How did he figure it out? But he doesn't say anything. He's trying to just let him keep talking, but he keeps saying his name. And then you find out the reason he's saying his name, but he's the one that survived. He's the one that got away. We almost did it together. And it's like, oh, he doesn't know who I am. Wait, what do you mean we? Like all of that like hit him all at once. And that Robert Pattinson did such an amazing job of like playing that realization and then turning around and going, what do you mean we? This isn't a we. We're not a partnership. You're sick. Um, and then he just like goes off in the
yeah,
cell, and he just well acted from both of them, and he just Paul Dano absolutely, you know, knocks it out of the park.
yeah. I mean, honestly, he absolutely killed that part. And what we have to get into is Pattinson's Batman. Now, in that moment, you mentioned he's playing that role really well, of just his reactions, his realization, and it really brings to light what they wanted to get with this Batman. And as you mentioned earlier, um, this is Batman Year Two. It took heavy inspiration from The Long Halloween. For those of you that don't read the comics, it's a great read. If you don't want to read the comic, I would suggest going on to HBO Max and watching the two-part movie that they made about it. Also fantastic, follows source material really well. It'll get you caught up fast. And honestly, I would recommend watching them, either one before the other or the other after, because you'll understand a lot more. You'll see the comparisons and where a lot of this source material is coming from. And again, this is a young Batman. He has never dealt with a supervillain. Now, is Riddler necessarily a supervillain? maybe more of a terrorist right now, in the aspect that they show him, but he still hasn't faced something like this. He has been focused on petty crime. He on like, people on the street. He's been roaming around just taking people out. Now he has somebody that is looking for him, which is the start of it all. And you get that realization towards the end when he goes into his monologues, like, I'm not making the difference that I thought I was. Because now they're starting to appear. Now they're coming for him. Now he's going to have that, are they here because of me? Which is a big point that gets driven home in the comics. But then Pattinson's playing that young Batman role very well. He doesn't want to talk. He's dark. He's brooding. So a lot of his acting, it's not like Bale, where he talks as Batman. It is very rare. I mean, we get I Am Vengeance. That's really about it, from Pattinson. So it has a lot to do with the non-verbal cues that he gives off as he walks around the room. Not only do the people within the movie, like, does he not just capture all their attention, but everybody watching. You get the same vibe that everybody actually on screen has when he was walking in a room, which is like, you can't do it any better than that when people feel like they're within the scene. So you can't play it any better.
Yeah, I think, and that ending monologue is in like great juxtaposition to the opening monologue, which feels like year one. You go back, if you read year one Batman, he's monologuing through it and walking you through this story. And the start of it all, and again, I think it could have been super cheesy with some of the lines that he had. It wasn't. He didn't have this, outlandish Batman voice. So I think it landed really well. Even the I Am Vengeance line, which is a great callback to the animated series, Kevin Conroy, who's one of
Which
the
is
best.
a thing that I really think that was, I guess, a pretty heavy inspiration, because if you look at Batmans before him, they all had pretty kind of heavy Batman voices,
Yeah.
especially the more modern ones, and we'll get into Affleck and Bale, because Batman has evolved more into the darker and darker character as time goes on. And again, he really referred back to the animated versions where he doesn't have a Batman voice. He just has a deep, monotone voice.
Yeah.
That's scary enough on its own.
Yeah. And I think, they introed so well to him with, the bat signal coming up. There's all of these crimes happening at the same time, and you're almost waiting in anticipation with them of, where is he going to show up? Which one is he going to
Oh
stop?
yeah.
And like, they think I'm in the shadows, but I am the shadows. And in a sense, he is, because they all run away scared. Every crime that we see, they all run away and stop what they're doing because they're afraid of him popping out on them. Until he does.
Yeah, I mean, that it's amazing what they do there. I mean, that the monologue is really what gets you. It's what gets your anticipation. You're seeing all of these crimes, and I think honestly that was a very well thing to do. It's not often, especially, honestly, I don't even know if I can name a time where where in a superhero film the main character is narrating. He is narrating for himself. And not only are you just getting his inner thoughts, it shows you this is his diary that he's using to keep his own sanity.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and you even see him writing it all down. The same things he said word for word, he's then writing in his notebook once he got back to the Batcave. And even in that opening scene, you see the difference comparing the opening to the end again, of after he saves that guy in the train station. And, that guy's like, please don't hurt me. Please don't hurt me. And then at the end, you have the girl not wanting to let go when she's being medevaced out. And she just doesn't want to let go of him because she feels safe with him. And it's this story of,
Yeah.
have I been making a difference? I have been making a difference, but not in the way I wanted, not the way I needed to. Vengeance isn't enough.
Yeah, which brings us right into the scene with the mayor. When we actually have Bruce Wayne, when Robert Pattinson is playing Bruce Wayne for the whole 10 minutes that he does in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really him playing Bruce Wayne just so that he can get information as Batman. Um, but then he has that scene with the mayor, and you also get hints to it earlier where Alfred's like, you have to do this. Like you have to run Wayne Enterprise. Like you're a Wayne. You have to be a Wayne. He says, I don't want to. And the mayor tells him as well, she's like, you're not doing anything for the city. You have so much money. You have so much things that you could do to help and programs. I want to be involved with you to get this going. Um, and I really think that again, I think they're definitely going to have sequels coming. I think me and you both are hoping, as we've talked about this, that they're going to have a whole universe going. I would love to see this not only turn into a trilogy, but a saga and have spin-offs because I feel that strongly about this movie.
Yep.
But then I think as we go forward, and as you see in that ending monologue, vengeance isn't enough. So then hopefully in the next movies we are going to get him playing Bruce Wayne, because the play here is that he is Batman. Bruce Wayne
Yeah.
seems to be the alter ego.
And I think, some people who have a problem with that need to realize that in this version we're getting in the movie, this is a guy who has not processed the death of his parents. It's been 20 years and he hasn't dealt with any of it. And that's honestly in every iteration. This is a guy who decided to dress up as a bat to fight crime to avenge his parents' death. This is a guy who has never dealt with his parents' death.
Yeah,
But you can tell he's still so deep in that grief that this is not a persona. He is Batman. And you get that line from the Riddler with, I see who you really are. I felt that way too when I had the mask on. Um, and that doesn't mean we won't get more of Bruce Wayne. This is his growth. And I had mentioned to you earlier, you go back and read the original first couple runs of, the Batman comics, and it's all Batman. There's no Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne wasn't introduced until later on in that series. Um, it focused on the Shadow and the Bat.
yeah, and I know definitely. I've mentioned this before as we've talked about it. And this is a 50-50 split on the topic. That I believe that the Batman is the best Batman movie to have come out. But there's one thing that could possibly change that for me, and it's not anything that happened before or anything that happened in the movie. It's gonna be how do they move forward?
Yep.
Because this whole thing was he's young. This is preliminary. This is trial and error for him, and he's still figuring it out. This isn't the Batman that we've known throughout all of the comics, at least as of recent. Um, and I hope we're gonna get there. I want to see him progress as a person. I want him to see him progress as Bruce Wayne. I know we talked about fight choreography before. His fighting style right now is very basic. He's lucky he has that armored suit on, or else he would have been dead ages ago. However, he's very strong and still has skill to him. But he's taking a lot of hits. I would love to see him be that shadowy figure that has that movement where people don't know where he is and isn't. I'd love to see a lot of tactical mindset coming from him, not just let's run in there and beat them up because they're not going to hurt me because my suit is so strong. Um, and again, as his character, I would love to see him at least play the part of Bruce Wayne and become more involved in the community and become more human as he deals with these supervillains. See his actual personality come out, not the lack of personality that he has right now. And I know we've mentioned it, even Robert Pattinson has mentioned it. I hope I get a Robin. And I really hope he gets a Robin too, because honestly, this is the first time where I am watching a Batman movie where I'm saying he needs a Robin. I never looked
And
at Bale and was like, we should get him a Robin. I never looked at any of the Batmans before this and was like, we should get him a Robin. Right now, I'm like, no, he needs a Robin. He needs Dick Grayson specifically.
yeah, and I think eventually it'll happen. I've seen a lot of people saying the same thing. If any Batman deserves a Robin, it's Pattinson. Um, and I agree, and I think it'll come with time. I don't think we should get Dick Grayson in the sequel. I think it's too soon, but and that's part of why I hope we're getting a saga. Give me a Harry
Well,
Potter world where we're getting 7 to 8 movies so we can take our time and tell this story and introduce, you know, more of the rogues and the Bat family, which is the thing that has been missing from the Batman franchise since George Clooney played it last.
Yeah, and I really don't want a repeat of that. Um, by any means, I don't want a Batman and Robin part two. Um, but yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think that the movie should open up with, like the next movie should open up with, oh, well, Batman gets Dick Grayson, Batman gets Robin. I want to see more story of him, and I want to see his struggle and his ability to change. I want to see him progress. Um, I don't want to see again him get a Robin 5 movies deep. I think that's too late. But even if at the end of the second movie, when we see he's getting it together and is starting to perfect the Bruce Wayne persona, if we even get a shot of just him going to the circus, if I
Yeah,
just get him
or
going,
or a sign of the circus is coming to town or something
yeah,
as your
just
little
something so
tease.
that I know either his parents are dropping at the end of this movie or that I'm
It's
going to
dark.
see it at the next one. I know, terrible. I don't care. Either way, I can just, by the end of 2, beginning of 3, I would love to see the introduction because I think with the pacing that they have right now, it would be the perfect time to bring them in. And then also that allows you to, it's no secret, Batman has had many Robins. The 3 that are going to be the highly requested ones are going to be Dick, Jason, and Tim. I would love to see all 3 of them on screen, at least the first 2, because we have so many great storylines as we get to the Red Hood, Killing Joke, etc., that involve them. Um, so again, I hope we can really get into those. So I wouldn't want them to wait too long.
I don't want that either. And there are a lot of other great characters. I mean, Damien's one of my favorite Robins. That's not a secret to you. I love Damien. I love his attitude. He's very much like Bruce, which you can tell makes Bruce realize, like, am I this difficult to deal with? um,
Yeah.
and Damien is a very, very far off, thing to even happen. But aside from him, there's Barbara Gordon. There's, Stephanie, who was a Robin and Batgirl. Um, Cassandra Cain, who Batgirl orphan. I think all of the rest of the Bat family and these other characters, I mean, even Kate being introduced, um, would be super interesting. And I really would just love to see these characters brought in to see their costumes because of how good the costumes looked in this movie.
Yeah, 100%. Um, with the costume in mind, though, we're talking about it. I loved this costume, and I love it for what he has right now, but I hope that they adapt it and they evolve it again as his persona changes. Because he's dark and gritty, and he's always going to be dark and gritty when he puts on that cowl. Um, but again, as we see that fight choreography move, I would love to see kind of the costume actually downgrade a little bit. Because the scary part about Batman was that he'll take a bullet and it seems like he's not really wearing anything that's going to stop that bullet, and he's not stopping. He's coming right at you, whether you hit his cape, whether you hit him, whether you hit the shadows around him. You have no idea, but he is coming for you, which I think is a crucial part about him, and I think was going to be a crucial part for the fight choreography, that he can't just take a bullet without worrying. So I love the suit. I love the suit. I love the bat symbol on it. It's different. It's something we haven't seen before. But again, I want to see it evolve with him. I want to see everything in this world evolve with him.
And I want more
As,
backstory on the suit, actually, because they don't. The one thing they don't mention, but it's clearly noticeable, is that the bat symbol is a gun
yeah, and that
that
was
was cut
noticed
in
as
half.
soon as the pictures dropped. They're like, this is a
Yeah,
gun. This is probably the gun that killed his parents. Like,
which
there was always speculation on it as soon as those pictures dropped.
yeah, which is like even more morbid and dark, and just goes to show how deep in his grief and darkness he is, that he's repurposed the gun that killed his parents to the centerpiece of his suit.
Yeah.
um
His loss is hopefully going to become someone else's hope. When they
yeah,
see that symbol, they're going to hope. Or on the other side of the coin, when they see what happened
yeah,
and they see that symbol, they feel fear. Um, depending on who's looking at it. Did you do something bad? That's
Yeah.
depending on how you're going to look at that symbol right there.
Yeah, it's no different from the S on Superman's chest. Um,
Yeah, I know we discussed that. We've discussed that, everybody says the S is for hope, the S, that is the symbol of hope. Um, in my opinion, I think that the bat symbol is a bigger symbol for hope. Because if you look at Metropolis, that is a great built up city, the best city in their universe. This guy's here and he's fighting the big bads, the super villains, the aliens, people that come from outer space and everything. But this guy, Batman, he is on the ground. He is fighting in the worst city on the world, the very big juxtaposition. You only see Metropolis during the day and you only see Gotham at night.
yep.
That huge juxtaposition. And he is fighting for the people on the street, the people in the city, to make the best life for them. He's not here to save the world. I mean, obviously, he's in the Justice League, all that stuff. He is there to
Yeah.
save the world. But on the day to day, he is there to just make Gotham a better place. And to me, that's a greater symbol for hope than the man with the superpowers just using his powers.
Yeah, and I think it's a city that most heroes would have abandoned. Most people would take it as a lost cause. You can't change Gotham. I mean, look at the police force. Even most of the police are corrupt. They've given up on the city. Um, but Batman is hope in that way, that he's the light at the end of the tunnel. And I mean, you see it in every movie, you see it in every panel. The bat symbol is only shown at night, and it's that light that you see. It's that's what we're striving for, to bring Gotham to the light. And honestly, it's not a far cry from what Riddler was trying to do, and bring all of that corruption to light. And it runs deep, and I don't think we've seen even the how deep it goes
No, not at
in this
all.
movie.
And it's just gonna get worse as time progresses. As time
Yeah,
goes on, there's always that everlasting argument. Um, why are there supervillains in Gotham? Because Batman's there, or at least that's what people like to say. Um, which is also always a fair point. But now that we got the first one, the Riddler, it's going to get further and further. I mean, I can almost guarantee we're gonna at least get close to a peak at Harvey Dent. I mean, the DA just died. The
yeah.
DA just died. I mean, he's coming. I mean,
Talking things that we noticed in the movie and just references of where we think it can go. Um, yeah, the DA is dead, so that leaves way for Harvey Dent. Um, we also get, all of those cards that the Riddler sent are almost calling cards to other villains. Um, the first one is an owl on it. That's the Court of Owls, potentially, which I think is also a setup, has a clear setup for a future movie. You've talked about the corruption. You've talked about the families that built Gotham, being the Waynes and the Arkhams.
yeah,
Um, and also, there's another member that helped build Gotham, you know, the Elliot family, which we get a reference to, and even more
yeah,
clear a reference with it saying "hush" right across the screen.
right across the screen, right across the screen, and that is great right there. Um, I mean, another villain that we know we're gonna get because he was there, but we're gonna see his rise to power is gonna be the Penguin. Um, Obviously the mob scene isn't the same after this movie. And he was considered, which was weird because we never see Penguin as the little fish, as the little fish in the pond. But now there's an opening for him, and he's going to come and take it, and we know that. So it's going to be great to see his rise to power, see how he develops as a character. Maybe he's going to get more into that comic Penguin that we have. Maybe he'll stay that mob boss. I wouldn't care either way because I loved that performance and I loved how they portrayed him, but he's definitely going to have a big impact in the next movie, no matter
I
what.
mean, all of every interaction he had with them was so great, and even though it was little, hey, take it easy, like all of that, when Batman first shows up to the club, but even then, when they captured him and they have him handcuffed, and he's yelling at them like, "Oh, aren't you guys supposed to be smart? You don't know Spanish?" And like he cracks the
Yeah,
case for them. Um, just but he knows a lot and he's up and coming, and I think even in the Penguin series that we're going to be getting on HBO Max, um, the potential of what other mob boss villains that exist in Batman can we see come up? Because now that, Salvatore Maroni is locked up and Falcone is dead, um, Penguin's going to try and seize power, but he's not going to be the only one that does.
Yeah,
Um,
100%. And that brings me to a storyline. I don't remember the name of it. You might know off the top of your head. Where the and it's it's also hinted at the end of the movie. Um, Joker and Riddler. There's a storyline where Joker and Riddler are battling. They're battling for Gotham, and the mob bosses have to pick a side. And they have to, and it's just an entire war throughout Gotham of who are you siding with, Riddler or the Joker. Um, and we see, I guess they're best friends now. I don't know how that's gonna go, but I honestly I would love to see more of it. It's a great dynamic that we've seen a couple of times throughout the comics. But I hope that I get that and I get that falling out, and then I can get that
yeah,
storyline.
yeah. Joker War
Yeah.
was crazy. It'll be interesting. I also don't think the next movie would be about the Joker. I think Joker might be our Thanos, where
Oh no, 100%. I think the next movie we'll get is definitely gonna just give him another cameo, and then another cameo, and so we're at the point where he's here. We're ready, and he's here.
yeah, and you don't even see his face, so it's you know now maybe the next time we see him, we actually see what he looks like, and we get to see the look of the new Joker. But it doesn't mean he's doing anything. We've just seen the character. Um, I would love to see, and I have a theory of like, what if they are building up and we see Batman, he takes on more villains, and maybe not even in a third movie, maybe it's in like a fourth movie. If it is a trilogy, it would be the third movie, I think. But you know, more villains get locked up in Arkham, and there's more super villains in Arkham now,
Yeah.
and the
If we
Joker
get Arkham
finally.
Asylum.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, a serious house on serious earth where he kind of, and even Arkham Asylum, the video game, where he takes over the asylum, and Batman goes in and he's got to take down these villains that he's already fought before. He already knows, but then it's like, but who orchestrated all of this? Who's behind all of it? And he runs into the Joker, the craziest villain he's ever faced.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, then here's a question for you though. When we get into that story, obviously you're saying you want it further down the road. Again, this is all hypothetical, which
yeah,
I think we honestly might get a good shot at because I'm hoping that every movie ends up with Joker talking to the next person that gets locked up.
I
Um,
think it's a genius idea.
it's a great idea, and I hope they continue that. Um, but if we're saying that our Robin comes in 2 to 3 movies, and we want this storyline in 2 to 3 movies. Does that mean we're bringing Robin to the asylum?
I think it's a good idea because one, maybe this is a lot of hands-on experience for Robin to then be in the asylum and going up against these other villains. Um, and not for something bad to happen to him by the Joker, but for him to get that experience. I would look at it in the same way as Tom Holland just as Spider-Man just got a ton of experience.
Yeah.
Spoilers if you haven't seen No Way Home yet, but he went up against all of these past Spider-Man's villains. Um, you take that included with the villains that he's already taken on in his movies, and he's now fought the most, villains in Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery out of any of the actors to play Spider-Man.
Oh yeah. I
And
mean,
now at this point,
100%.
I think he's more than ready to take on anyone from his rogues gallery. I could see something similar with Robin, where you take him into the asylum, he gets a lot of first-hand experience with a lot of people, and then maybe you do a time jump with your next one, and you age Robin up a little because the only way we're going to get multiple Robins is if we're doing something like that. You
Yeah,
know?
and I know Pattinson mentioned this as well. He said if I'm getting Robin, I want a 13, 14-year-old Robin.
Yeah.
I don't want the older Robin because that doesn't work. That's not what it's meant to be. These kids are supposed to grow with Batman, and because they're kids, Batman is supposed to grow with them. Um, and I which I think is a perfect idea, but what you also always have to keep in mind, when you're working with actual kid actors is that they get older, and it's not as easy to hide it as somebody who's already like in their mid 20s. You can't
And
age them up or age them down so easily. So you have to pump out movies, and you have to age accurately with how they age.
well, if they continue on the same trend, they actually don't have to pump out as many movies in a short amount of time because they could do a Robin TV series, same way they're doing Penguin, same way they're doing this
Yeah,
now Arkham show. You could do a Robin show and see the actor age, do maybe 2 seasons, and then the next movie you do, he's now 15, which puts him almost at the age of like you can start pushing the Nightwing, you can start pushing him getting distant from Bruce.
yeah. I
Um,
mean, I definitely think the Nightwing mantle comes, at least for it comes really at like the adulthood, um, around more like the 18 mark. But like I said, if this kid is playing an accurate age for Robin at 13, 14, that's 4 years for him to get to 18. And obviously you can fiddle with the age a little bit. I mean, 18-year-olds look like
yeah,
19-year-olds, etc. Um, but like at the end of the day, you're not going to get too many movies with a singular Robin keeping that same mantle if you're casting young.
yeah, yeah, and I'm all for uh, whatever direction Matt Reeves decides to take. I mean, watching this movie where it's a true detective film, and that's what it felt like. I would say, you know, I'm all in with whatever direction he decides to take. I know he just said recently the Gotham City Police Department show that was supposed to take place during year one is on hold. Um, and the Arkham show that they're doing now will be more of like a horror haunted house style show, which I would love to see that. I would love to see a full on horror movie. Arkham being a horror based project, I'm all in every genre he decides to tackle for this. And I would love to see him, maybe tackle a different genre and even subgenre with each movie and each adaptation. I know with GCPD, and part of the reason that it's not going forward is I guess Warner Brothers is uncomfortable with it being a corrupt cop as the main character. Um, Today's day and age, it's a very sensitive subject, and um, but I think it's relevant, and I do hope that we do get to see that. Um, and let's tackle more like we've said before. Logan really works. Logan is a western. This was a detective movie. Let's tackle more genre pieces and branch out. I know another villain that a lot of people want to see, and Matt Reeves has name dropped himself as someone he would want to do, is Mr. Freeze. And part of the a lot of people's reasoning too is to see Gotham in a different color palette because of how good this looked, and red was, the main color for this movie. What if we got a winter Gotham and blue was our main color?
Um, if they have the same crew that they had on this project, I have no doubt what they can do. I know the lighting design was amazing,
Yeah.
cinematography was amazing, set design amazing. Um, all of these categories, I mean, I believe are award winning, which is weird to hear from a superhero movie. But I think these are all deserving of awards.
Yeah, and I think even you get down to like just the practicality of it, you know, that hallway scene where, he comes out of the elevator and they're shooting at him and the bullets are just flying off him. The only time you see him is because of the muzzle flash. And,
Yeah.
you know, um, that was done practically. And Matt Reeves even said that they were going to do it originally just digitally until, they came back and were like, oh, we can do this. We can recreate this. They had to break it up, he said, in order to film it because they broke it up in smaller sections to make it work. They couldn't do one long sequence because it was so dark, and
Yeah.
to make sure that it looked right and he was in the right places. But
Yeah, you got to pose them. Then everybody
yeah,
knows their action. Repose them. There
yeah.
you go.
but it works and it's amazing. And I mean, even the cinematography of it, you know, it looks like that. It reminded me of that scene from Rogue One where Vader comes down the hall and all you see is the lightsaber light up, and the next thing you know, everybody's running for their lives.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, and it was amazing. I know we've talked about this. Um, what do you think this is going to get nominated for? If you think it will get nominated for anything?
Honestly, this is this is a movie that I think should be nominated for. This is a Best Picture nomination. Um, you know, I could see Best Supporting Actor for John Turturro and also for Colin Farrell. Um, I could see this getting Best Cinematography, um, you know, costuming as well. Your hair and makeup, because I mean, look at Colin Farrell. He looks nothing like himself. You have to recognize that. Um, you know, I would even go so far as to say Best Director. Um, and I don't think it's a far off cry. I mean, Joker, I believe, was nominated for 11 Oscars. Um, the most nominated superhero movie. There's no reason this movie can't do the same thing.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I loved all of the performances around the board, directing, everything. It was great. However, I know more things going to come out. Other things are going to overshadow it, etc. However, if the people behind the scenes, again, in lighting, editing, everything, if they do not get nominations, that's what I think will be a crime. Because, like I said, the things that really had my jaw drop was the scenery, the set design, the
Yep.
lighting, the cinematography. It all felt amazing. Um, so no matter how good this movie was, I think that was still my favorite part about it, just how beautifully shot it was and how everything was put together so well. So I think that is, to me, if it does not get nominated for those, would be the biggest crime to me, because I don't know what would even come out to beat that. Honestly,
Yeah. I mean, we'll have to see the rest of the year. There's that Elvis movie that's coming out. Um, you know, you got a couple other superhero movies, but I having seen, there's nothing against the MCU. I love the MCU. Um, I don't know if any of them have looked this good.
no,
So
and
I don't know if you know Thor: Love and Thunder will. I don't know if it's going to be a contender against this.
no, I don't think it will. I mean, Thor Ragnarok looked pretty good, but it didn't look like the cinematic masterpiece that this did.
Yeah,
Honestly, though, I wouldn't be surprised if we get more things like it. Not the tone or the vibe of this, but cinematically and how it was shot. I think we might get a chance of seeing more things like this, because even as I watched No Way Home, there was some of those jaw-dropping scenes for me in there as well. Like when Peter is looking at the billboard, when he's in the rain on the rooftop. It
it's a
was
beautiful scene.
beautifully shot scene. And there's a couple of moments throughout the movie where you get that. Um, I know that isn't always what the MCU is shooting for, but maybe seeing
Yeah,
that in that movie, is a sign for more of it to come. That, hey, we are film, we are cinema, and we're gonna show that through all the good things that we do. We don't just focus on the action, the blockbuster, and the quips. Which I think Homecoming, while it still is a blockbuster, it has those cash grab moments. It did have moments where I was like, "That's a beautifully shot scene." So I hope that I
yeah.
get to see more of that from the MCU.
And I think one of the things too you get in No Way Home, um, and it's a testament in No Way Home to just how good of an actor Tom Holland is. That you know when it was a scene that was serious and the emotion needed to be driven home, he nailed it, and he did. Like he like a stake through the heart. Um, you know, it's all in his eyes. You know, you can see every emotion he's going through. Um, so, you know, take that, combine that with, you know, just crafting this beautiful shot for shot. And there's no reason, you know, you can't make the next Spider-Man movie look like the Batman or any superhero movie look that good. Um, you know, I don't think it's been the main focus. at the same time, the MCU is juggling a lot with it being such a huge universe.
Yeah.
So it's hard to, you know what I mean? There's a lot to juggle. So sometimes it's give and take. Um, but I do think that, when fans turn around and they're like, oh, Black Panther should have won Best Picture, or this Marvel movie should have been nominated and won Best Picture. And then I watch the Batman and I'm like, no, this is how you win Best Picture.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I know I mentioned this even earlier. Um, it's it's a different type of superhero movie. I mean, you have
100%.
superhero movies that'll tackle serious subjects, ones that look good, such as Black Panther and The Dark Knight. However, there's again, we talked about the genre pieces, the movies that feel real and get you so involved with that character that you don't even remember that it is a superhero movie. We
Yeah.
Logan, the Batman, Joker. We've talked about these. Um, they are all in their own category. It's when someone might ask me, like what some of my favorite superhero movies are, they're not always the first to come to mind because they don't feel like it. However, if someone
Yeah.
reminds me, I 100% like, oh no, yeah, that was it. I mean, those
Yeah.
those are amazing. Um, and I think that's honestly the direction that more superhero movies should go into, because Jesus, this was a 3 hour movie. I mean, we've gotten other 3 hour movies um, from the MCU for superheroes, obviously No Way Home, Endgame, etc. But this was different. When I'm watching those movies, I'm waiting for the next thing to clap for. I'm
Yeah.
waiting for the next appearance. I'm waiting for the next big thing. This
Which
thing,
is exactly what Doctor Strange Into the Multiverse of Madness is going to be. Is that end
yes,
game type of, yeah, what's the next thing I'm clapping for? What's the next thing I'm cheering and gasping at? Um, after you see Patrick Stewart come on screen and wheel up, um, you're like, all right, now what? Who's next? And then you get it, and then you're like, all right, now what? There's nothing wrong with that. I'm so excited for Doctor Strange too. It's going to be
yeah, but
such an amazing movie.
it's so different though. It's
Yeah,
so different. Where
opposite
to
ends
the
of the
fact
spectrum.
that yeah, where this had me glued to the screen throughout. It didn't have me jumping out of my seat every 20 minutes. It had scenes that had me jump out of my seat, but it wasn't so consistent. But it kept me glued. It kept me interested.
You were enthralled by it,
And
yeah.
yep, and because in all honestly, I don't have like I think my favorite superhero movie of all time would probably be Logan. Um, but no superhero movie cracks my top 10 favorite movies because I feel like they don't hit on those marks. This is the first one that I felt like really hit on those marks. Um, and just I'm not saying it's going to jump right into my top 10 because there's a lot of great movies out there that I loved for a long time, but it's the closest that I've gotten to saying like, wow, this is the type of movie that I like. I know I've been excited for movies that I thought I would be like it. I know when New Mutants was coming out, I was so hyped for that movie for so many years. I
Yep.
thought it was going to be the best thing to come out. I was very disappointed.
As
But
as most X-Men movies leave you.
yeah, 100%. But I love thrillers, crime dramas, etc. So when I heard that I was gonna get a thriller superhero movie, oh, I was opening night. I was like the only person that was opening night about that movie. But if I can get more like that, I feel like it's only a matter of time before you start seeing superhero movies in my top 10 and a lot of other people's top 10s as well. Um, because we're seeing people talk about this movie the way they did The Dark Knight.
Yeah, and I think with New Mutants, it was supposed to be this big, delve into horror, and it just wasn't that at all.
No,
Um,
I
but
didn't have a drop of
with
fear during that movie. I
him
didn't
turning around
really
and saying,
feel
I'm
much of
making
anything
a
during that movie.
crime movie, I'm making a detective film that's it's this noir film and it feels like that and it has all of those elements. He turns around and says Arkham's going to be a horror show and it's going to be like a haunted house set in Arkham. Yep, I believe that it will be. Like
Yeah.
truly will be.
No, yeah, I think he'll definitely deliver on that. I have zero doubts in my mind. I mean, this felt like one of the detective crime genres that I love to watch. Like we mentioned, Zodiac, a more recent movie, The Little Things, which was a great one, a very noir version that again I'm seeing getting those same vibes from it. Um, the detective and cop work that's going on through it, it seems real. Again, throughout it just felt as much as a detective crime genre movie as one that doesn't have a superhero in
Yeah.
it. So it hit every mark that it needed to.
Yeah, and I think he he it's funny that Matt Reeves came in and he's revitalized a character that didn't necessarily need it. And I'm glad he did. But I mean, you look at what he did when he stepped into the Planet of the Apes trilogy, the remake, the most recent one. Um,
Yes,
he came in
amazing.
for Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and then War for the Planet of the Apes, and those movies are so good and like just the depth of Caesar's character, who was also played by Andy Serkis, who was great in this movie. Um, it just so good at kind of coming into a franchise that has been around, and is either being done by somebody else or has been done by somebody else and kind of just taken over and saying, yeah, let's do it this way. And you're like, oh wow, I didn't think of it like that. I wouldn't have done it this way. And it's the best version of it now. Like, what has the original Planet of the Apes got on this, on the new ones,
Nothing,
um,
nothing. It's got paper plate masks. That's what it has.
yeah. And now you look at like you're looking at Batman and you might say, yeah, the Dark Knight is still really good. But what about the rest of them? What about, Batman Begins, The Dark Knight Rises, Batman Returns? We don't even have to mention Batman Forever or Batman and Robin. We already know that this new one is better.
Yeah. Which this has been the argument ever since this movie came out. And it has been, is the Batman better than the Dark Knight? Um, I know your opinion on it. I know my own opinion on it. I believe that it is.
I think it
To
is.
this point.
I think I think the intro to The Dark Knight is still my favorite. Um, Only because it's such a crazy thing. You get all these goons coming in, you're like, oh, this is Joker's gang. And then they start just falling off. They're killing each other. And then all of a sudden, the last one standing pulls off his mask, and you're like, oh, shit, he's been here the whole time. And he has that great scene with, the manager of the bank. Um, whatever doesn't kill you simply makes you stranger. And he just drives off in a bus full of money. Like, it's such an insane intro to a movie. Um, and yeah, you get it. This one, you get Riddler killing the mayor and everything, and it was creepy when the mayor like walked away to pick up the phone, and then you see the Riddler standing there. You're like, oh god, how long has he been there?
Yeah.
But there's something about just all the action of the Dark Knight's intro. But as a whole, I do think the Batman
Well,
is number one.
my bone to pick with it is that I mean, there's always no disrespect to the performance done in that. We all know that Joker performance is known to be one of the best of all time, superhero or not. It is iconic. Everybody knows it. I mean, as soon as it came out, people were terrified. I mean, people were excited. I mean, it was Joker in a light that we've never seen him. It was executed
Yep.
perfectly, but it felt like he was the main character. I felt even Bale was his supporting cast.
Yeah.
And it just, you're not saying that Bale does a bad job, but compared, it
It's
just,
it's just how well Heath Ledger did in that role. And I mean, it's crazy because even Aaron Eckhart, who played Harvey Dent in Two Face,
which
his
great. He did
transformation,
great.
yeah, such a phenomenal performance that even going forward, with if we get Harvey Dent in the next movie, once we get Two-Face, it's a hard performance to top. He's just outshined by Heath Ledger's Joker. He steals
Yeah.
every scene he's in. Even when he's not in it, you're still so trapped by the last scene you saw him in that you're like not focused on these other characters. You're
Yeah.
just like, did he really just do that? And by the
Yeah. I
time you
mean,
get over it,
iconic.
he's on screen again.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's all just so iconic of what he did. But then it's just like, why is that movie so great? And we just answered it. It's because of Heath Ledger's Joker.
Yeah.
While here I felt like the cast throughout was amazing. I had no complaints about anybody in the cast. Again, I felt like maybe while the villain might have been written better, um, in The Dark Knight, I think the movie here was just written better as a whole.
Yeah.
The cinematography, I think miles ahead. I don't even think I need to explain that one. Lighting, editing, again, all of that post production and behind the scenes, I think blew it out of the water. So it's really like, is one performance enough to topple a whole movie?
Yeah,
And I don't think
you're
so.
looking at the one, you go back and you look, and Heath was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, but in this one, if this was, to go to the SAG Awards, I would say this is, Best Ensemble Cast.
Yeah,
Um,
100%. I think that means more for the movie than
yeah,
just one actor. That just means his performance is going to go down in history as one of the best ever. And I think no matter how much time you give it, it always will, because it was that legendary of a performance. But the movie, that doesn't mean the movie as a whole has to go down as the best. And I think that's where people are getting confused. Or, they also could just like The Dark Knight better, which, neither here nor there. Everybody is entitled to their opinions, but in my opinion, I just think the movie as a whole was just better.
yeah, I agree. I mean, the everybody and I can rave about all of their performances till I'm blue in the face. Uh, even Jeffrey Wright as Jim Gordon, I loved the scene after the explosion went off. He wakes up in the cell, and Jim's there protecting him, but still like, hey, this isn't the way we do this. You know, trying. He's still a cop. He's still doing his job.
Yeah.
Um, it all around. I absolutely loved all of it. The hints to everything. I can't wait to see where they go, who we get to see next. Honestly, the sky's the limit. We could get 3 villains in the next one, you know, or more. Really, it's anyone's guess what we see next. I mean,
Yeah, I think it's definitely great. And as you mentioned, the performance of Jim Gordon, I think that was great. And I always thought while watching this movie, I think the best thing, and I know I mentioned it earlier with Pattinson, but I think it's everybody in this movie. It's the nonverbal.
yeah,
I don't know if they were being directly told what exactly they need to be doing in this scene, but it worked out so perfectly. I mean, the tension of the people in the room as they watch Pattinson walk by, his performance as he just walks, he doesn't speak, he just walks by. The tension between Pattinson and Zoe Kravitz, amazing when they don't need to speak. I mean, you feel it. It's radiating off them way before that kiss.
yeah.
Um,
I, I mean,
it's just
even in the
phenomenal.
beginning when Batman shows up to the crime scene and he's walking through and no words are being said, and all the cops just stop and they're like, "Well, I mean, I mean, you would. First of all, he's big because he's in this suit and he's like, he's imposing. But you're like, is this really him? You imagine being a cop and you're like trying to stop vigilantism, and this is the guy. This is the
Yeah.
vigilante. This is him right there, and he's walking into the crime scene. So
Yeah.
I will say that the final section of the movie, uh, towards the end, when he busts through the windows on that dome to fight all the Riddler henchmen. Um, it felt the most like the Arkham games I've ever seen in a Batman movie. Um, it felt like a Predator mission that you went into not knowing it was, supposed to be silent and take everyone down, and then you tried to make it work.
Yeah, anytime you're just busting through any window or going through a door and there's just 1,000 henchmen there, you're like, oh,
Uh, Awkward, and they're
no.
all like looking for you, and then you get that moment when he blows up the canister. That's like when you throw your smoke bomb, and you're like, all right, I think I can turn this around and make it work. Um, they
Yeah,
get
yeah,
tackled by a big guy.
100%.
So directly after that scene, though, he does get tackled by a guy, and Catwoman saves him, and then she's about to get gutted, and he pulls the little canister out and just injects himself. What do you think it
So
is?
I know what you want to say, and I know what everybody is hoping that it is. Um, and yes, referring to Venom. But problems and not problems that I have with it. I mean, we don't have Bane in this movie or anything. But then when he injects himself, all you kind of get is this burst of energy and rage from him. And yes, that is what Venom will do to you as well. However, I would love to have seen maybe like the veins, something, to kind of signify physical attributes that are being
To be
added to you.
fair, though, he's completely covered from head to toe, so we don't really have the opportunity to see. Yeah, I know it's
Right in his
sad.
cheek. Right in his cheek.
Right in his, right in his cheek, we should see the vein pop
Just
out.
big vein.
But I think like the fact that you know, yeah, if it was adrenaline, first of all, it was green. Like it was, it was,
Are you a doctor?
it was pretty green.
Look kind of yellow from my angle.
I saw it in Dolby.
I think that only refers to sound, but whatever.
Nope. The Dolby Vision, truer colors.
I don't know.
I
Yellow.
I will say that, like, yeah, he gets that burst of energy, but it's the aggression. It's the hyper aggression that makes me think, all right, this isn't just adrenaline, because he doesn't. He doesn't just stop until like Gordon comes and pulls him off, and even then he turns around like he's about to deck Gordon.
Well, I think there's also another argument that can be made for that, because I mean, you see the relationship between him and Selena, and that could be just his feelings for Selena. He doesn't want her to be hurt, and she's in that situation to where you see red, someone that he
But
actually cared about the first time he sees somebody that he cares about,
so wouldn't it
past,
have been
childhood.
enough? Wouldn't it have been enough of him just seeing red that he didn't need to inject himself with something?
Nah, he was he got beat up. He got taken down. He was torn up. He couldn't move for a second. It took him a while just to get that canister.
I think the interesting thing about it, and what a lot of people don't know, is that when Venom was first introduced in the comics, it wasn't through Bane. It was actually through Bruce. Bruce was using it and had become addicted to it in order to fight crime because it made him stronger. It was a product created by Wayne Industries. It then was, it found its way over to the prison, Santa Prisca, that Bane was locked up in, and a scientist was started to experiment with it and alter it, and then started giving it in doses to Bane, where he became addicted to it and then broke out and he had the strength to match his brains to then get out and made his way to Gotham.
Well, I mean, look, if it is Venom in that storyline they're going to go with, I wouldn't complain it by any right. I would have just loved to see more of a hint to it. But again, I wouldn't complain, because then that hopefully means I'm getting Bane in the next movie, if not in a movie soon. And we haven't seen Bane on screen. At least we haven't actually seen Bane on screen. I don't know who was playing him way back when in Batman and Robin. That was not Bane. That guy did not talk. It was gross. It didn't look right. And then we got Tom Hardy, which might have been even further from Bane than that. I mean, he didn't look like him. Didn't have his race, which is an important part to his character. He didn't have any attributes of him. The completely wrong backstory. Just nothing about him was Bane except for maybe a tactical mindset. So
Yeah.
I haven't seen Bane on screen, in my opinion. And I mean, I would love to get a real adaptation of Bane, which I think based on what we got here in the Batman, we would actually get Bane done to justice. I think we would get a right portrayal of him. So I would love it, but I'm not
I
gonna sit there and say it's Venom wholeheartedly.
I think it'll be interesting. I think even just tying it into Wayne Industries, you get that kind of like Marvel Iron Man, link where, it's similar to like the way they were doing it even in the old Spider-Man movies where it's like, oh, everybody works for Oscorp and everybody's linked to Oscorp somehow,
Yeah.
linking them back to Spider-Man. You know, I think it might be interesting to see that. Um, but I do think there is a way of grounding uh, that character in like Bane and making him fit into this world. And I think
Well,
there's
I
a lot of
think
villains that can do that
this
too.
this isn't exactly Nolan's verse. I mean, so far we've gotten everything practically. Everything has been practical to a T. I don't think there's anything else too impractical except for like a little moment in a car chase. But other than that, everything in this movie has been practical from the villains to Batman, everything across the board. Um, but I would like to see them go a little more out there than Nolan did because I don't want a repeat of just what's realistic, what can I get that's realistic. At the end of the day, it's a comic book movie. Um, I mean, I get most of his rogues gallery is depowered. They're mostly based on intellect or having gangs and such, having henchmen. But I mean, I would love to see villains like Ivy or Freeze, Bane, Croc, all these guys that are powered in at least some sort of way. And it doesn't need to be, oh, like Bane doesn't have Venom, because honestly, what is Bane without Venom? Or, Freeze doesn't have, like, I want the actual renditions of these characters, just maybe explain them in a way that'll make sense. Maybe their origin might not be exactly the same, or maybe how their powers might not be exactly the same, but I would still love to see them.
Yeah, and I think that even with Nolan, he didn't even there was a step away from even the villains that would require too much of a sciency explanation, like Freeze, who has a freeze gun, or Firefly, who's using a flamethrower and a jetpack to get around. But I think Matt Reeves' world, it feels real, but it still feels fictional. It feels like it's the
Yeah.
comic book come to life. Um, and I think there is a place for, Freeze, and Firefly, or even Ivy still having her powers, but grounding them in a way that, like, okay, maybe Ivy's an eco terrorist. You can bring a realistic storyline uh, to some of these characters. I mean, and Freeze has one built in. All the pain and grief that Bruce would
Yeah.
understand of his wife, and he's just trying to save his wife.
Yeah.
The ends
And
justify the means.
the good thing about Batman is, for the most part, his villains are already explained, in a not completely or always realistic way, but in a scientific way that at least makes sense to comic book knowledge. It's not
Yeah,
like, hey, this person was born and he has powers. Like, he's not dealing with metahumans usually.
yeah.
For the most part, it's people that gained them through, again, usually means of science or accident. Um, so again, I think it's completely practical to have them in there, and I hope he does, because again, I don't want Nolan's verse part two, where I can only get mob bosses, or I could only get depowered villains, or anything like that. I want to see the theatrics, and I want to see all the amazing things they can do on screen. Especially, we mentioned this 1,000 times, the crew that they have. I mean, the people behind the scenes on this movie
Yeah,
have been incredible. I would love, again, if they're using the same crew, I would love to see what kind of special effects they can bring to the table when dealing with a powered villain.
100%. And I think even like a villain like Killer Croc, he looks the way he does. He looks like a giant crocodile man, but he's not. He doesn't have powers per se. He was born with this defect. Um, and yeah, he's huge. I mean, that's not unheard of. People like Shaq and Yao Ming exist. It's not unusual to be super tall and then also be super buff. Um, and I think there's a way of like even grounding that story where it's like, you know, was he born a monster, or did society, turn him into one by the way he was treated because of the way he looked? Where he just, if you can't beat him, join him type of thing.
Yeah, and I think there's two interesting parts to that that are gonna feed really well into what they're doing with the Batman right now, which is it's again it's very noir, it's very dark and whatever. And then we're supposedly going to be getting the Arkham Asylum show. So in that show, it's going to be very thriller, very horror, which I love that they're leaning into that aspect. And with Croc, I think it's a perfect opportunity for anybody that's played the Arkham games. I mean, those missions where you're fighting Croc are terrifying. You have no idea when he's gonna pop out. And I mean, I'd hate to see it on screen, but I would also love to see it on screen. And I think, a villain like Croc, we get it sometimes in the Arkham games with Man Bat, and I also think that would be fun. Him try because with those two, they're very elusive because
Yeah.
they don't always have motive to do things. So Croc lives in the sewers for the most part. He lives in the sewers. So for him to track down a reptile in the sewers or to track down a giant flying bat that can swoop in and swoop out is very different. And I would love to see his detective work across those mediums
And
as
that's what
well.
I was going to say. You can still keep this detective aspect, which I don't want to lose. I want them to continue to build. We mentioned seeing, billionaire philanthropist Bruce Wayne, and but I don't want to lose detective Batman in the process. I want to keep these. This isn't a two-dimensional character. These aren't flat people. You can be more than one thing. Um, and I think seeing that detectiveness and dealing with, you know, these other like Croc trying to figure out where he is. So, where's the next time Man Bat's going to swoop down? Because he transforms, and that's the other
Yeah.
difference. He changes back. Well, how do you find him when he's just a normal person?
I also
Um,
think the interesting thing is if we use Man Bat, just the confusion at the beginning of the movie. There's a giant bat terrorizing people in Gotham. What's new?
what's new? That's already been happening.
What's
I
going on? And so they're like, no, like a bat. What
Yeah,
do we call it? Like, what are we gonna call this one?
I think another villain laying into that fear. Batman is all about fear. His villains instill fear in the people, and you can't do fear in Gotham without the master of it, and that's Scarecrow. And he was done really well. Cillian Murphy did an amazing job playing him in the Nolan trilogy. But I would love to see another approach to Scarecrow, and maybe design wise, like that Freddy Krueger esque Scarecrow we got in the Arkham games. Um,
Yeah, I think this moral of the story is we need to pull more things from the Arkham games.
I,
Uh,
I I think so, and even the Arkham games, they went all they ran the gambit of Batman villains. You went from having the Joker and everybody in Arkham to then Arkham City. You had Freeze and the League, which I think is another big aspect of Batman that I understand not seeing it right away. And we're still missing parts of Batman's origin here. Like, we don't know who trained him. Where did he go to learn?
Yeah, I know the one thing that stuck out to me within the movie was at some point it was Alfred talking to him and he said, I could teach you how to fight, but I can never be your father. So I'm guessing, Alfred, special forces in the British military, uh, obviously he knows how to fight. I had some kind of part in that, but I would love to see more of it. I want them to bring in the League of Assassins. I want to show that Bruce has been gone. I want to show that he's been trained. Now he's back. Um, I want Raish and Liam Neeson. Credit to him, did a great job of playing the Raish that he was given. But I would love to see a more accurate Raish. I would love to. One thing that would be a complaint for me during Nolan was a lot of these villains were just white.
Yep.
When they're when they weren't supposed to be. I mean, okay, granted, Scarecrow's white, so it's Joker. However,
Right.
Bane, Talia, Raish,
And I think
not white.
and Talia bugs me because even if we're not going this far in the movie, you know, you get to Damien, and Damien is not, yeah, he's half white because he's Bruce's son, but Damien is not this light skinned, he grew up in, over with the League of Assassins. He grew up with Talia. He's brown. He's
Yeah,
he's dark. And uh you get those aspects of that and his killing and everything, and then he's also got Bruce's personality through and through. um but yeah, seeing those aspects of it, and getting the lead, getting Talia and Raish, and there's other members that are there. You have David Kane, you have Lady Shiva, both of whom are Cassandra Cain's parents. Um, just another member of the Bat family to introduce later on down the line. Um, you also have the Court of Owls. That's another group of villains that is obsessed with a member of the Bat family. They're obsessed with Dick Grayson. Nightwing is their chosen one, their savior. And the Court of Owls has a back door into this world. We've already exposed the corruption. It's there. How deep does it go and how old is it?
Yeah, which we already know it is very old because they're going back to the founding families. Even Riddler is
Yeah.
just going back to the three founding families right there.
Yeah.
So I get there's so many ways that they can go here. And just the only thing that I really ask of them is going to be that when we're doing these movies, I want to explain, because obviously, we've seen the Batman backstory. We were going through a list earlier. There is, not including animated movies, there is about 12 Batman movies. Not
Yep.
including any animated movies, there's 12 Batman movies. We're seeing his origin. We know his origin. And then there's also like 100 animated Batman movies on HBO Max as well. There is the animated series that we've all watched growing up. I don't need to like see him from the very beginning. I don't need the origin story, but I would love to see at least flashbacks or explanations for his journey. His journey from that point is what I'd like to see. And then I want to see how he's developed from that and how he's going to keep developing from here. And I want that with him. I want that with his villains, and I want that with the Bat family. I want just everything to go through huge character developments because we have the youngest Batman that we've ever seen.
Yeah.
At least, to the screen. I don't know how old Robert Pattinson actually is, but
Still
this is
relatively young.
relatively
He's
young
young.
for the role, yes, and he looks, I'm sure, even younger than he is because he barely looks like he's aged since the movies we don't want to talk about that he was very popular in.
I mean, maybe he really is a
Maybe
vampire.
he really is. That's why he keeps picking bat roles.
Yeah.
um but yeah, honestly, again, I want character development. We have this young Batman. Even Alfred is younger.
Yeah.
I would love to see him adapt as he brings in children. Because again, you already see him say that he struggles with, I couldn't raise you. I couldn't raise you the way I would have wanted you to be raised because I'm not your dad. Like I didn't have experience raising a child. I was just, you were mine
Yeah.
at that point. Like that was it. Um, I would love to see him develop because we have a younger Alfred, we have a younger Bruce. Hopefully, I know Patton said it that he wants the young Robin. Hopefully, we'll get those Robins young, naive, campy, and develop into, while they're still not as brooding as Bruce, but develop into the character that we know they are. Red Robin, Nightwing, Red Hood.
And
I
I think
want that.
that's the part. Batman isn't always dark and brooding. There is a little bit of campiness that exists in Batman, and that campiness comes from Robin and the rest of the Bat family. And the Bat family is so big now, and I would love to see it grow and see it on screen. And I know that it's a lot of people, and I know that it would take time, but I would love to see all of them kind of come in because they're all so different from each other. Dick is a completely different character than Jason, than Tim, than Damian, Stephanie, Cassandra. You know, all of these people that are part of the Bat family are also different and also unique, and they offer different things to Bruce. Um, they're the hope that he wants to see in Gotham. Like that's what he wants for them. And in the comics, he's not that great at always doing it. He's still learning, and you know, trying to be a parent, and he lost his parents at such a young age. It's hard. And even that line of Alfred saying, I didn't know how to be a father, and how does he know how to be a father? You know, but still
Yeah.
trying.
And then I know, like, again, once we get into the Bat film, there's always those dynamics that they have. And where, he struggles with Dick. That's obviously why Dick becomes Nightwing. There's a lot of, conflict and controversy between them. As he was growing up, there was things that Bruce took from him that he probably wouldn't have wanted to. His life would have been a little more different.
Yep.
He didn't want to be the person that he was growing into if he stayed with Bruce. But then you also get that aspect of, as he brings in more Robins, Dick realizes that and brings them up how he would have been brought up. Because to most of them, if he's, I mean, he's the older brother or a second dad.
Yeah.
And he plays the role as such because he looks out for every single one of them, whether, no matter, even if you're talking about the ones his age, like if you're talking about um, the Canes, or if you're talking about Barbara, Jason, who isn't far off from him in age, you know, he's
Yep.
still looking out for them because he knows he can make up for what Bruce couldn't give him, because he's always, you know, he's the shining star. He's the shining
And
star of the family. He's always the bright smile and the happy face that's always going to bring everybody together.
100%. And I think you also see the difference too in that, like, yeah, things could have been different for Grayson had he not been taken in by Bruce. You know, he would have had a completely different life. He wouldn't have been in danger had he gone into the system and grew up in the system. But you then see what it's like to grow up in the system with the next Robin. You see what Jason went through, and it's like,
Yeah, you're no
was this
better
really
off.
better? Yeah, it's still
Yeah,
Gotham. At the end of the day, it's still Gotham. Are
yeah,
you
and
better?
I think Dick really realizes it, because he never tells him don't take on more kids, don't bring in more Robins, because he realizes like you are saving these kids' lives, but he's like, there's some places where I'm gonna help you because you're
Yeah.
not the ideal dad. Like, you know, you're not on Happy
Yeah.
Days. You're not like you're not gonna
Yep.
be that guy.
Yep. He's not emotionally available. You know.
Yeah, exactly what it is.
And I think, growing the Bat family, it's more than just the Robins and the Batgirls and all of the sidekicks. There's Lucius, who's just as a part of the Bat family. He knows Bruce's identity, and he
Yeah,
helps
very
with.
much. And he gives us Duke too, which I don't really need to see Duke, but you know,
Well,
they're
Duke's
connected.
a great character. Duke's actually a metahuman too.
Yeah,
Um,
I know that. He's just not like on the top of my list. He's probably actually like the very bottom of the list, but he's the newest. He is the newest character, you know.
yeah,
So I haven't seen too much from him. I know he's been in a couple runs, and I've seen him throughout the animated movies and such. So you know, I've been familiar with the character, but it's not something that I absolutely need. But yeah, Lucius is a very big part of everything. Um, I know we've talked about this, is that, I mean, I want Lucius. I think Lucius should be there. But there's one aspect that I liked about the Batman that I didn't get from the Nolan films, and is that it seems like Batman has a brain.
yeah,
Um, I mean, Bale was great, and I think he showed to be the best fighter, the best tactically out of all the Batman that we have seen. I mean, out of any on-screen Batman, he brought out some of the best fight scenes. He showed to be the most well trained.
well,
I
let's
mean,
not forget the warehouse scene. Ben Affleck.
no, Ben Affleck killed it, but like we didn't get really get to, we have minimal screen time with Affleck.
Yeah,
We
no,
have
we
very minimal
definitely
screen
do.
time with
We
Affleck.
definitely do.
But I'm consistently, Bill showed us that he was probably the most well trained Batman.
Yeah.
Because again, with Affleck, we only got like really the one fight scene. Everything else is just weird when you go into Justice League and when you fight Superman. But um, yeah, so like he's great in that aspect, but we don't show Bale having a real brain. He's not doing any detective work. He's busting into buildings and beating people up.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to his gadgets, he just goes to Lucius. Hey, I need this. Or
And
hey,
Lucius is like,
what's
yeah, we
that?
got
Can
it.
I have it? What I liked about Pattinson's Batman was that you see he doesn't have Lucius. It's him and Alfred in a cave building things. That suit, he probably made that.
Yep.
100% he probably made that. And you see how durable that suit is. It was taking shotgun shells to the chest.
And
And
even
the
the
car.
Batmobile,
Yeah.
you see it taking the shots when Penguin is shooting it, and it's bulletproof, and it's not a tank, it's not the tumbler. And honestly, I loved the car.
Yeah.
It
Honestly,
was so badass.
I don't think it's gonna be the most iconic Batmobile ever. I don't think it's gonna be the most remembered, but it might go down as my favorite. It seemed
Yeah.
practical. It was cool. I mean, again, it was him. Bruce made that car. It wasn't an entire team at Wayne Industries that made it. So it looked like a real car. We didn't have the tumbler. We didn't
I
have one of those old school Batmobiles. And you see him working on it throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Because you get the little shots as he's in the Batcave. You'll see it in the background. There's a car that's covered over. There's
And
an engine that he's
I
working
think
on.
that build up, like you said, you see in the parts of it, the build up to then when we actually see it was so
Yeah.
great. And like terrifying for the villain. Like all of a sudden you just hear
Yeah.
this engine start up and it's like, wait a minute, that's not a car engine. What is that? And then it like just you hear it revving and revving and it charges forward real quick and you're like, oh, and then Penguin like is gone. He dipped.
Yeah.
He's in his car taking off. Um, it was such a great build up. And I would like to see more of that with like more bat vehicles, maybe. I mean,
Yeah.
we got the Batwing in the Nolan trilogy. We got the Bat Sub and the Bat Boat in Batman Returns. I would, even though some of that stuff, might kind of seem kind of campy, but like look at like a James Bond. James Bond makes vehicles like that work and seem realistic because it's like, oh, that's military tech. Yeah, you're not
Yeah.
seeing that on the street, but this is coming from Wayne Industries.
Yeah. I don't know if I need the boat and the sub, but the plane I think is definitely something that has been very well used throughout all of Batman.
I mean, with the
The,
ending, you might need the boat. I don't know how they're gonna get around Gotham anymore.
yeah, yeah, maybe. I
You
don't
might
know.
need the boat, but
That's why
there's
he
like
developed it.
in the. I mean, that's a great segue into like, why does he have a bat boat? Like, how we had to get around.
We
In
started out with a dinghy, but then
in the last James Bond movie, one of the coolest parts was there's a like plane they're in, and it comes out the sky and they're flying in it, and it's really kind of just gliding, but then it like nosedives, and once it hits the water, it converts into a sub. And I'm like, yeah, that's like something you'd see in Batman. Like
well,
that could work.
he had a suit that turned into a squirrel suit. So I
Yeah,
don't with just two strings. It was
he
out.
zipped it. He zipped it in
Yeah,
the middle.
he
It
zipped it.
zipped.
He zipped it.
It
Two
zipped.
strings and a zipper. That's all it took.
Um, but yeah, I think all of that stuff is like stuff I want to see, and I think there's a really good chance we will with just what we got in this movie. The anticipation is high. My hopes are high too, but I don't know how they couldn't be with like after watching that movie. I don't know how I cannot contain my excitement for just the future of it.
No, I 100%. I I was I was hyped about this movie. I know there's a lot of controversy about the movie. About people just like Pattinson, Batman. This isn't Riddler. There's a lot of things that people
Yep.
are iffy about. I'm glad that I was on the good side for the entirety of this because it did not disappoint. I think a lot of people are eating their words right now, and I think just one last thing that we're gonna leave off on here is gonna be I'm glad that I saw it in theaters and I didn't wait because I know a lot of things that have been coming out recently. I remember December was a stacked month for movies. Obviously, you had No Way Home, but there was Nightmare Alley, there was The Kingsman, there was, I believe, Encanto came out during that time. There's a
Yep.
lot of movies coming out that didn't really get the attention that they deserve. And what I'm realizing is that all of them were in streaming within 45 days. And so
And
then a
I'm
lot of people
guilty.
are,
I'm
yeah,
guilty of watching some of those.
I watched Kingsman, you know,
I
on
watch.
was it Hulu or HBO? I think HBO on who I watched Kingsman on HBO, and that was a movie I wanted to see in theaters. But so I'm really glad that I saw this movie in theaters, even though we don't know when it'll go to streaming or whatever. Um, but I think it's an important part of the industry is that everybody starts going to the movies and not just for the big blockbusters like the Batman or like No Way Home.
Yeah, and I think you want to see these movies the way they were intended to be made. And it's also listen, don't just sit through the credits because you're waiting for the post credit scene. There's a lot of people that work on these things. You know, you make a movie 3 times. You make it when you write it. You make it when you film it. You make it again when you edit it. And then there's all the people that work on it in between. Um, and you want to see all the work they've put into it. I know some people will watch a movie on their phone while they're at work on break. And I couldn't imagine watching a movie like Ready Player One on my phone. I would miss so many details of that movie. Um, because it's not how they want. You should be watching this on the biggest screen possible with the loudest speakers possible to
Yeah,
really like just put yourself in that.
and not only do you want to watch it how it's intended, but you want to make sure that the people making these movies are getting the credit because a lot of times, you're seeing these big blockbusters, they have the big releases and that's it. They're the only ones doing numbers. And I know like specifically, like I told you, Nightmare Alley came out in December. Guillermo del Toro is one of my favorite directors. And I want to make sure that he gets those box office views. If you want your favorite actor, your favorite director, your favorite, like say if it's a established storyline, if you like, if it's from a book or something, go and watch it in theaters, because in all honesty, that is how you're going to get the most money for
100%.
that franchise, because they get their money through the box office. I mean, it goes to streaming and they make deals and they get money from that, but they do it because they have to, because people don't want to go to the movies anymore. And
Yep.
Corona was a big part of that, where it made it even bigger, where everybody's just signing deals and going right to streaming. Um,
Yeah,
but
I
again,
mean,
I think,
if it's a franchise you like, if it's a book that's finally getting adapted, you know, go take your friends, try to tell people to go see it in theaters. If you want it to get a sequel, if you want to see more of that, if like you said, if you there's a director you really love or an actor you really love and you want to see them continue to work and make big movies, go support them. Go watch it in theaters. Those numbers, those opening weekend numbers, they matter to the industry. Um, and also, if friends don't want to go by yourself. I mean, yeah, you might not have somebody to talk to about the movie when you're done, but there are people, and there's nothing like that experience of going. You're experiencing it with everybody at the same time, and you're sharing this collective experience, but at the same time, you're having your own personal experience because you're not talking during the movie. Um, and I feel like that experience is so different in the theater than when you're at home. You're putting your phone down, you're putting it away, you're not looking at it. When you're home, you're tempted, because there's nobody around to judge you. So you do it, you're on scrolling through social media. But in the theater, you get such a different experience that I think is worth, going to have. Um, and go alone. I go alone. When I moved to LA, I started going to the movies alone because I didn't know anybody. And I was like, I could do this all the time.
yeah, I know you're a little better with that than me. It's not very often I would go to the movies alone. I still have to get used to it. But I mean, he is right. I mean, I don't even know why I don't like not going to the movies alone, because I hate if people try to talk to me during a movie. Even if I'm at home, I'll pause a movie if someone tries to talk to me. If my phone rings, I want to throw it across the room, because I don't want any distractions while I'm watching anything.
Yep.
But yeah, 100%. You have to go out to theaters. You have to see these movies. And if you're going to take anything away from this podcast, and we'll probably preach this time and time again, as we keep making episodes, is that you should go to the movies. You should give your money right to the box office. You should promote those numbers, because a lot of movies are considered to be failures off of opening weekend. Doesn't matter what
Yep.
they do after that, they'll be considered a failure right off of opening weekend. So just go out to the movies, experience it, whether it's with your friends, by yourself, anything. Get out there and just go back to the movies, because they're struggling right now. They need it, and you are going to have a much better time watching it there in that environment.
Yeah, and I think that's a great thing to end on is just consume more content, consume the storytelling. Um, you know, I couldn't think of a better way to end that.
All right. Well, we are out of time. So I want to thank everybody for tuning into the Beer and Skittles podcast, where we go into the depths of pop culture. I know we talked a lot about the Batman, and next time we're going to get into a lot more in-depth topics, a lot more of them, but just a huge blockbuster right now. So thank you for tuning in, and we will see you guys next time.
Thank you.